Thank you to CANactions for inviting, well, me on the behalf of the SPACE10 to share our work. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, but I guess let's get to it. So we're called SPACE10, and we are a research and design lab in Copenhagen. So that's our office in Copenhagen's meatpacking district, which is quite ironic because we work with sustainability. So yeah, that's how it looks. This is where we work. There's no people here, but trust me, we do have employees. Yeah, we recently redid it to make it like just full of sustainable materials and to reuse the old facade of the building, and yeah, it looks quite nice. So apart from the office, we actually have a test kitchen, like an experimentation space, because we also do a lot of work with sustainable food. So here you see our kitchen with some of the materials where, yeah, our chef in residence does his experimentation. We also just opened a gallery, so it's called the SPACE10 Gallery. It's mostly to showcase our work and really invite the community into our space, but also to showcase the work of like-minded people. So here is our first exhibit. It's called Ville, and it's a project about providing clean solar energy using blockchain technology. We do conferences, we do speaking events. Yeah, it's really important for us to have like a multi-functioning space where our innovation isn't closed and kept in a sort of secret box where we can actually share with everybody what we're doing and invite the community to challenge us and maybe expand our viewpoints. And we just opened a functioning cafe that we also call the test kitchen, where people can actually come and like taste the recipes that our chef is working on, maybe get a burger made out of bugs, or just get a coffee and hang out. And finally, we have a makery at the bottom. So I guess this is what's most relevant to here, but this is where we actually prototype everything that we do in terms of architecture and open fabrication. So we have tools like a CNC machine and other things which I don't know the details of because I'm not working down here. But yeah, basically it's really amazing because it lets us actually test things out before we put them into the world right inside our own office. And yeah, we go abroad, basically. This just looks nice. Yeah, we do pop-ups as well, like in London, and also we've had one in Paris. But again, just like to get out of our box of Scandinavian thinking and sort of test whether our approach to innovating for a sustainable future actually makes sense for people outside of Denmark. That's just some nice looking food. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, we're a research and design lab on a mission to create better and more sustainable ways of living. How does that work? Well, we're funded by IKEA. So you could call us their innovation lab, but we're not really, because we don't work on their current business. Like, I think we've done one app that has to do with furniture and things like that, but our role is really to push IKEA to live up to their mission statement, which is the same thing. It's to create better lives for the many people. So what that looks like is essentially us doing research into areas I'll tell you about later, then us kind of funneling it into prototypes and pilot projects, and going through the long process of pitching IKEA to invest into these ideas over like 5 to 10 years. Yeah. So our work is defined by what we call macro trends, as in trends that we can see are ebbing and flowing throughout the world that have commonalities between each other and that are set to come together and redefine life in the near future. So the first one is accelerating urbanization. It's no secret that our cities are getting bigger. We're having megacities pop up now, and that more and more people are moving to cities for opportunities. But considering that, we also have to look at the faults which are in cities now, right? I mean, everything from traffic congestion to really expensive housing to lacks of public space for socializing in some cities, to how lonely people might feel in cities. It's like the more that we make these huge mega places to live together, the more that these problems just kind of end up getting worse. So we might as well start thinking about how to tackle them now. Political and economic shifts. So the world order in that way is changing. I mean, we are seeing the next billion people come onto the internet and use it in different ways than, say, people who already have been connected have used it before. We're seeing a sort of change in power dynamics where, you know, China is becoming a huge, is a huge, massive player in terms of global economy. We're seeing trends of, you know, Europe maybe becoming more closed. We have Trump in the States. At the same time, we have a new empowered global south. There's like a whole bunch of really rapid transformations in terms of the power structures of the world. I don't have an answer as to like how to deal with that, but it's something to take into consideration when building new solutions. Technological breakthroughs. Everything from augmented reality to virtual reality to, I don't know, even offline map systems. There are so many technological breakthroughs which are becoming more and more accessible for more and more people, regardless of income levels. And that's super exciting because basically, well, that means that people can get connected, but that also means that as we bring forward technologies like artificial intelligence or like augmented reality, which further blur the lines between people and technology, we need to think about, you know, how does that change the very nature of the human experience, and how can we use these technologies to enhance being human rather than, you know, make us all creatures like staring into our phones every second of every day. Declining natural resources. The climate is changing, not for the better. And yeah, especially in working with fields like innovation or architecture, we just have to be very conscious of how the materials we're working with, how sustainable they are, or the energy footprint of technologies we're using, like, I don't know, Bitcoin or blockchain, for example. So fitting in kind of a sustainable or holistic way of thinking about people on the planet is crucial to us in what we do. And finally, demographic shifts. So it's we're living in a time where, you know, some people are getting older, some people are getting younger. Some countries are defined by a lot more aging people, while some are defined by a lot more young people. So it's kind of, these two groups of people have very different needs, and, you know, we need to start thinking about that now, like, how will we take care of an aging population in 10, 15 years? Is it by putting them into homes like we have now? I mean, probably not, as in those don't work that well. So yeah, this is the scope of the things that influence what we do. So with those macro trends, we've kind of funneled them into, you could say, 4 cases. And by cases, we mean these are like our long-term projects, which we will make prototypes under that we will try to get IKEA to fund. The first one, which I will be talking about more in detail later, is shared living. It's the idea of living together out of desire, not necessarily just necessity, and living together in a way that contributes to our mental health, but also to the health and well-being of the planet. Augmented intelligence, it's, I guess, our riff on artificial intelligence, but basically the intertwining between the human body and new technology. And thinking about how to make that a positive thing that's beneficial, not necessarily something scary. Solar energy, looking into this clean form of energy and how to actually make it more accessible and cheap for the people who are not connected to the electric grid right now. And open fabrication, so open source methods of designing buildings, basically. Well, not just buildings, actually, also furniture, but that's for later. So basically, we have these 3 ways, well, not 3 ways of working, but 3 aspects of SPACE10. We've got research, we have design, and we have culture. So research is where we first begin to explore and analyze opportunities. It's where we produce reports. It's where we produce playful design projects. It's where we say, we found something very interesting. How can we discover what it means so that then we can funnel that into design? And this is where we take that research and we try to ideate, validate, and eventually pilot whatever solution we've come up with. And all around that, we have culture. Culture is where I work, since I'm the editor there, but Culture is basically our lifeblood, because without sharing our work with our community and without being open for feedback and criticism, we have nothing and we won't make solutions that last. So through storytelling, through conferences, through events that take place in-house and abroad, we're able to get initial reactions to our work and also new perspectives, and that's what makes the whole thing work. And finally, if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. That's a mantra we tell ourselves all the time, which is why, we have a core team of 30, but I would say our extended community is over 200 people. We've got residents, so that's like people who will come in and work on projects sometimes that will feed into our universe. We have collaborators, design partners, VFX partners, research partners, people that we need to make diverse work that actually resonates with the many people. And finally, our community. So yeah, this is, I actually don't know why I left this slide in. I just think it looks nice, but this is basically how we work. We try to work in small teams that kind of interact sometimes, but really so that everyone can have their focus area and kind of dive deep into something and then come together. I feel like in innovation culture, which stems from agency life, sometimes there's a bit of a creative director has his hands in everything, or you're working on a million projects at a time. But for us, it's really important that people have the time and headspace they need to be able to focus on making good work. And yeah, last year we were called one of the world's most innovative companies by Fast Company, so I don't know, hopefully we're doing something right. But yeah, overall, I would say, to summarize all that, we strive to see patterns where most see chaos. So considering how rapidly and almost aggressively the world seems to be changing, where can we find the red thread? Where can we find the things that keep on repeating themselves, if you will, in between this chaos, and actually leverage it to make effective design? So I guess the first way we do that, and our primary way, is something we call playful research. And playful research, we like to say that's where the left brain meets the right. That's where we take, your traditional deep academic facts, but then we kind of funnel it through a playful design approach or aesthetic to make it appealing and actually accessible to many, many people. So a relevant example here of that is a project we did called Building Blocks. Building Blocks is, I think this is from last year, but it's a prototype of a mini house that we made in partnership with some residents that is made out of sustainable plywood. So why sustainable plywood? Well, because it's cheap, first of all, but also because it's actually easy to work with using new tools like CNC machines. So when working with this prototype, we actually cut all the planks inside our makery to try out this system to build this house. And so yeah, the idea is basically that in this dream house, you would be able to have digital files which are online that everyone can download and essentially print their house and plop it wherever they want to put it. And yeah, right now this thing exists in a farm outside of Copenhagen, but most importantly, this prototype doesn't actually work really well right now. Like if it's raining, you can't be in there, you will get wet. It's super cold, it's not ideal, which is why we open source the design files. So right now, if you go on buildingblocks.io, you can actually download the design files and iterate upon them yourselves. And I guess this is key to our mentality, is that we don't wait for our work to be absolutely perfect and viable as a product before putting it out. We would much rather inspire other people to work on these issues together so that hopefully somebody can actually make this work one day. And of course, well, not of course, but Charred House 2030, I'll talk about this later more in depth, but this was a collaborative survey around co-living, which we put out, that also fits into playful research, but which actually really kicked off our work into shared living. So why shared living? I mean, in detail. Well, because there's a whole list of challenges. So we'll be 1.2 billion more people by 2030. That means 3 billion people will need a new home, and that's 40% of the world population. So that's a huge need. And are we going to continue building condos, which are only accessible for some people? Are we going to continue having systems like in Copenhagen, for example, where as a newcomer to the city, you rent apartments for 3-4 months max because they're all full, there's no apartments? I mean, it's coming pretty fast, so it's like we kind of need a really quick system of building something that is viable to house this many people by 2030. At the same time, by 2030, the global population aged 60 up will account for 16.4%, putting huge pressure on our economic, health, and housing systems. Now, so I'm Russian, and in my culture, as in Ukraine, like I grew up with my grandparents basically right beside me. I think this culture has a really great way of integrating aging people into our daily lives, but in other cultures, not so much. In other cultures, old people are put in homes, or they're left by themselves in apartments, or they're kind of forgotten about a little bit. So how can we reverse that, essentially, and build systems which do answer the healthcare question for an aging population, but also kind of make them feel wanted as part of a society, and not just as somebody that people have to take care of? Then, based on current projections, 2.5 trillion square feet of new buildings will be constructed worldwide by 2060. That's the equivalent of adding another Paris to the planet every single week. That's crazy. Like, that is crazy. I mean, think about the scale of that. And in connection, think about how already our built environment accounts for 40% of global CO2 emissions and 33% of humanity's resource consumption. So, new Paris every week by 2060, but right now we have this situation. So, unless we kind of rethink the materials with which we build and the ecosystem of our buildings themselves, the weight that our construction of these new homes on the planet will only continue to get worse and much less sustainable for our planet to carry. And I'm sure, as everyone in this room, well, not everyone, but many people can relate, there's a global increase in housing prices, making it difficult for people to live where they desire. Places with the most economic opportunity have become unaffordable for the people who'd benefit from it most. So, yeah, I mean, living in cities is expensive, and also, along with that, because it is expensive, it also, makes it a lot easier for landlords or homeowners or whatever to manipulate people into sort of paying whatever is needed to live in cities. That's also not sustainable. So, it's sort of, we're like looking for the ideal situation here. How can we make sustainable homes where people feel really, really good living there that also don't break the bank? And finally, many people experience social isolation and loneliness in this new concrete reality. I mean, I think it's a little bit too soon to see if it is the building, it's like the urban life itself that is making us so lonely, but at the same time, it is a fact that more and more people are feeling lonely in cities despite having access to everything at their doorsteps. So, I mean, maybe that comes down to essentially how we think about building communities. What is important about building community? Is it having 3 cocktail bars on one street? Maybe. Is it having a green space for children to play around? Also maybe. I mean, there's a lot of different kind of options to play around with, but it's for sure that we kind of need to start testing our definition of a healthy community in order to alleviate the loneliness problem that is happening in big cities. So, I mean, all of that is intimidating, but we really believe that shared living could be a potential antidote to these challenges. So shared living would be, what if we made a system that took into account the aging population, the loneliness, the lack of affordable housing, the rapid urbanization, while also making sure that people can actually buy into their homes, that these homes can be flexible and convenient for daily life, and that they're also circular and sustainable. So shared living, what is the definition in our mind? It's a group of people coming together, inhabiting the same area and sharing spaces, rules, services, facilities, activities, and in some cases finances, all to varying degrees. So, I mean, I know that there's already kind of projects working on some of these issues, but tackling all of this in one project proves to be a little bit difficult, right? So if you take these three focus areas, sustainability, affordability, livability, if you have a cooperative housing model like the one that I grew up in, let's say, it could be affordable and it could be livable, but it wasn't really sustainable in terms of building materials. On the flip side, I mean, we have a new co-living like environment in Copenhagen by Bjarke Ingels that is sustainable and that is affordable, but livable-wise, like, it remains to be seen. So the challenge is actually not making a shared living system that works on some levels, it's making it answer these three necessary questions. And, you know, of course, though, we're not at all the first ones to think about this. I mean, sharing our home is nothing new, and it comes from a history of people being kind of forced to share resources. A really classic example is the American boarding house from the 19th and 20th centuries, where new immigrants would come to the States and kind of be put in places where they had to live together, often under not very good conditions, but that served as a very rough and a rough blueprint for how we might share in the future, granted with much better conditions and with people actually wanting to share resources. And this is actually, with the new wave of shared living, this is a recent example. Oh, yeah, okay, we're fine. From the country where we're based, so in Denmark, it's called Sættedamen, and yeah, it originated in the late 20th century by a bunch of hippies, basically, who wanted to live together and share resources. And, you know, the point was primarily to create a really socially rich life. So questions like finances and religious beliefs and all that were kind of left alone, but these residents really saw an opportunity to team together and to answer some of our human need of being together in a healthy manner, together right at home in a community. And so I would say this project inspired a wave of similar projects in Denmark, which I won't go through right now, but which are existing. And of course, Friends. I don't know if this is a very American reference, but Friends, I guess, portrayed a really idealistic version of 8 people or 6 people living in a New York apartment for 8 years. But it was fun and funny and all that. But yeah, I guess in this show, it was apparently realistic to share an apartment for 8 years. So, I don't think that would actually work, but it's still nice that it made it onto the big screen. So yeah, I mean, with all the kind of challenges of urban life that I talked about, SPACE10, of course, is not the only organization by far to realize those challenges. Thankfully, multiple architects, urban planners, cities, et cetera, are really thinking about how to tackle these challenges with new investment into shared living concepts, prototypes, and eventually communities. But when we started thinking about this, I mean, we're like, okay, we don't even know the first thing about what people would actually want to share if they live together. And, to build a shared living community, which accounts for people's needs, you need to know what they want, right? So that's why we made this project, One Charred House 2030. Yeah, made in collaboration with design duo Anton and Irene. It's like a hypothetical application for a shared living community that you can apply to via the internet. But really what it is it's a survey. It's going on now, actually. It's still ongoing, even though we released it 2 years ago. And yeah, it's a gamified survey about what people would want to be willing to share. So yeah, that's the vibe. But so far, we're lucky enough to have had more than 14,000 people from 147 countries participate. So that means that the insights we've gathered are actually like relatively diverse across cultures. So now that we're starting to use the results of this into making solutions, we know that we're not just getting a primarily Western perspective or a primarily upper middle class Northern European perspective. We're actually getting a pretty diverse picture of what people would want to share. And the exciting thing is that, well, every single person is willing to share at least something. So, well, what did we actually discover? So yeah, the main reason people would want to co-live, share resources, is to socialize. Which is super interesting because, I mean, from the research I've done in terms of how shared living is marketed or cooperatives are marketed or whatever, it's often like the financial question that comes, not necessarily first, but pretty high up there. But from the findings of this survey, we found that, yes, finances are important, but it's really about the social aspect of shared living that people care about the most. Yeah, it turns out that people would want to live in rather small communities of 4 to 10 people. And I mean, there's been a few co-living projects, especially in the States and also in like London and stuff that have been popping up lately, which are geared to maybe 20 to 30 people, which sounds small-ish, but we were really shocked by this, that people would, you know, want that small of a group of people. Because if you think about it, that's kind of like living with roommates for life. It's not people that you casually know. You know, if you're in a house full of 4 people, then those become your friends and kind of your family, which goes to show how much closeness people really want from other people when considering shared living. Yeah, they'd also like to live with people of different backgrounds. Also really great, people actually want diversity in their immediate homes. So, I mean, for all the talk going on about how people just, you know, are polarized and want to surround themselves with people who align with their political beliefs and cultures and well, we had over 14,000 people tell us that, in fact, it's the opposite. So that gives me, I don't know, a lot of hope for humanity. But unfortunately, yeah, children, feel a bit iffy about that. Couples without children are the top choice. And as for teens and babies, people like really don't seem to be quite tolerant to that. And also in certain countries, like some located in Asia, single dads as well are not really the most desirable. That said, of course, like this is just, you know, preliminary findings from an internet survey. But if anything, this shows that more effort needs to be put into, I guess, of how to make homes that can make living with teens, babies, single dads, or whoever you don't want to live to, like a really nice experience. But in terms of the problems, because, you know, this isn't a bouquet of roses, a lack of privacy would be people's top concern. And I mean, it's legit, right? Like if you're being sold a concept where you have to share resources, you have to talk to people every single day, you are kind of entering almost like a kibbutz style living project, then yeah, your immediate thought would be that privacy would be something that you sort of give up in exchange. But we don't necessarily think that's true. I mean, it's all about creating flexible systems, right, where say you have some common areas, but you also have some really nice soundproofed, insulated homes for you to live in, and that you also don't feel obliged to participate in the social activities of your communities, right? Like that's part of a solution. And then, yeah, if you're over 60, other people's mess and the intimacy of overhearing conversations would be a concern. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have an immediate answer to how to alleviate that, but it's something to think about as well in terms of what kind of rules should there be when you build shared living communities. Should there be kind of rules, like a cleaning schedule? I mean, who manages that? There's these kind of operational questions that start to pop up when you see that stat. So yeah, no surprise here, people want their own bathrooms. But a bit of a surprise that people would rather help clean than have daily dinners. So again, it's like what we're seeing is almost like a bit of a hesitancy, you know? People want to share their lives more intimately, but they still want to be able to say, no, I want to have my own dinner, my separation when I want to. So again, it just goes to show that building these really well-functioning, well-oiled, flexible homes is key to making shared living work. I mean, if you're curious, you can still go online and do this survey now. It's free, and honestly, we look at these results, I would say, every few months or so, just to keep updated on what people are saying. So I would really encourage you to go and do it. It takes like 5 minutes, and it's quite fun. So One Charred House 2030, we put out, I would say, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. What have we done since then? Well, I would say One Charred House 2030 really cemented our exploration into shared living. It really showed us that this is something, it is an area where there needs to be a lot more focus because people want it. So, next step. Half a year ago, we put out a magazine and podcast combo called Imagine. And, well, Imagine is all about the brave new world of shared living. It's articles by architects, by designers, by people who have lived in shared living communities. We tried to paint as broad of a picture as we could about the historical and present landscape of shared living, while also like answering, some of the financial questions and more of the business-oriented challenges of making shared living a reality. It's free, both things are free, and you can download this publication online, and you can also download the podcast. And yeah, we've been exhibiting it as well recently. So this is from a London Design Museum's group exhibition about future homes, basically, from November, where we exhibited One Charred House 2030. So I don't know, we're basically just showing it around the world and hoping that it sparks ideas and that we get feedback to it. And so we finally prototyped something, which I can't talk about at all, but it'll be out in 2 weeks. So if you follow SPACE10 on social media, then you will hear about this mysterious prototype in 2 weeks. But I'm really proud of it, so you should check it out. But okay, to summarize, what does it take to build the sharing movement? What have we learned so far? Well, that you have to design for sharing from the get-go. That repurposing kind of spaces which were built for, say, single-family homes or whatever into shared spaces, I mean, it will take a lot more effort to make it work, right? So the sharing aspect should be thought into the architecture, the planning, the design, as well as the financing of a building from the get-go. Digital tools. I mean, think about, these examples aren't without their problems, but think about what, say, Uber did for transportation, or what Airbnb did for traveling affordably. I mean, this really made those aspects of life a lot more open to a lot more people. So why can't we use the same kind of digital mentality with shared living? What if we made, I don't know, an app where people could actually manage their home in a way? What if we created a digital way for people to communicate with their neighbors and plan out shopping lists? I don't know, like, things like that would just make being invested into your home and feeling like you have control over it much easier in the palm of your hand. Rethinking business models. I'm not an expert in this, but it goes to show that to actually make shared living profitable for developers or for people who build these communities, kind of rejumbling of the dominant business models of creating dwellings needs to be thought of. And there's some ideas, and it works super well in some countries, but there's a lot of challenges to like local regulations around who can live in what kind of apartments, or what aspect of city-owned land can you build on, can you not build on. There's so many different layers of complexity to this question that this is probably the most difficult aspect of making shared living like a massive, wide reality for many people. And finally, build community capacity. You don't want to share resources unless you get something out of it, really. And it seems that for a lot of people, the main thing they want out of that is community. So again, integrating the community aspect of sharing our homes is also crucial in terms of making these not just homes that people want to live in for, 2 years or something, but homes for life, like homes for life where they can cultivate a community together, share resources, take care of the planet, have flexible homes, actually live for cheaper, and in a way that is viable and can actually be replicated across cities worldwide as an answer to the challenges that we're facing today. That's it. Thank you.